Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I did a video recently called The Press of Battle, where I went through quite a complicated example of the changes to the fighting rank and supporting attacks, and in particular casualty removal and how that works when you've got a wide unit where not everybody in the fighting rank is able to fight. And it looked like it sparked a bit of a debate online, and I don't think we're in a place where everyone's playing it the same way. Nothing wrong with that, of course, and people playing slightly different rules in slightly different places is healthy for the game, and perhaps there'll be competing ways of playing it, and we can figure out a path forward depending on people's experiences at events and so on. But I thought it best to do another video with some very simple examples, or as simple as I can make it, really to sort of bring home what that difference is, and then you guys can figure out sort of what side of the fence you're on, and maybe we can come to some consensus. Wishful thinking, maybe, but let's go for it. So we've got 10 orcs here in a line with hand, weapon, and shield, trudging forward, and they're unlucky enough to be charged by a dragon. Now, the dragon charges them to one side, as you can see in the picture. And so here is our scenario. Now, what makes this simple, of course, is that we've got 10 orcs that are all in the fighting rank. And hopefully we can agree that if that dragon were to get 10 wounds, then it's 10 dead orcs, right? It doesn't matter if they're one rank of 10 or 10 ranks of one. If the dragon gets 10 wounds, then all of the orcs die. So let's look at this example, right? So the dragon charges the 10 orcs and kills 5 of them. How many attacks back do the orcs get? Hmm. Well, before the 1.5 edition, the answer would be obviously 5, right? Because the entire fighting rank can fight, they lose 5, and there's only 5 orcs left. And I suppose the unit would just be shrinking depending on how many orcs are killed. So I'm going to go through what I would call method A, which I would call the rulebook method, as you'll see in a minute why. Um, what does it say about losing casualties in combat? So stepping forward and closing in. This first sentence, we can kind of ignore it because everyone's in the fighting rank already. It says in combat, casualties are moved from the back rank of their unit as normal, even though it is models within the fighting ranks that are being slain. So everyone's in the fighting rank here, so that really doesn't apply. And then it says slain models are considered to have been removed from the ends of the fighting rank. Now, I know this is obvious, right? But the ends of the fighting rank is going to be from the end, right? From in this example, the right-hand side. Now, we could do it from the left-hand side as well. It won't really make any difference because either way, we're going to end up with the same result. We're going to end up with 5 orcs left. Some of them are in base contact with the dragon. It also says at the bottom that models that remain in the fighting rank after casualties have been removed are more likely to be in base contact with the enemy, having closed in upon them. And that's just reinforcing what it says in the non-italics text, which is that you're removing from the ends of the fighting rank, and so the ones that are left are the ones that are in base contact with the model, right? So we can sort of, in our minds, to understand it, imagine as if those 5 orcs that are near the dragon are being slain by the dragon, and the other orcs are stepping up, or in this case, stepping sideways to be in base contact with the dragon. Now, it also says, and this is not in the close combat section, this is earlier on in the rulebook about reducing casualties generally. It says for single rank units, casualties must be removed evenly from either end of the rank. Now, this is more applicable when you're removing casualties from in the shooting phase, or in the strategy phase from a vortex or something like that. Because in close combat, it's not going to make much difference because the ones that aren't, if they die from the ends of the fighting rank, they're stepping up to be more in base contact with the enemy anyway. But if you want to be accurate, I suppose you could remove it from the ends of the fighting rank like that, evenly from both sides, and then the other 5 orcs step up. But either way, we're left like this, and so the orcs get 5 attacks back. Now, method B, which has been doing the rounds online, would be to do the measurement of see who can fight in the rank of orcs before you roll for the dragon. Okay, so we measure the orcs movement value before, we can see that there's 3 orcs in the fighting rank that can't fight. And so when we reduce the casualties, and regardless of where we remove them from, we're only removing the orcs that can fight, and therefore we still end up with 5 orcs in those positions, but only 2 of them can fight back. Okay, so which side of the fence are you on? in this example, do the orcs get 5 attacks back or do they get 2 attacks back? Now, in terms of what the rules say, if we're taking casualties from the ends of the fighting rank, I believe it should be 5 attacks back. There's an old FAQ which people are pointing to that uh, gives some backing to method B that there should only be 2 attacks back. And this is an old FAQ about supporting attacks. Now, I can't remember whether this was 6 months ago or 12 months ago, but it was before the latest 1.5 FAQ. And it says models in the fighting rank that are killed before they have a chance to fight cannot, but can a model make a supporting attack if the model in front of it is slain? Now, obviously, normally, if you're behind the fighting rank, someone from the fighting rank dies, you're going to move into the fighting rank, you're going to step into the fighting rank, but you can't fight on that turn that you've stepped into the fighting rank. But if you had a spear and you're eligible for a supporting attack, then you can fight even if you've moved into the fighting rank because the guy in front of you has died. And the answer says yes, if they have not been killed, models able to make a supporting attack can do so as normal. In other words, casualties inflicted firstly reduce the number of models in the fighting rank that are able to fight, and secondly, the number of models in the supporting rank that are able to fight. So what I think that's saying is that you lose attacks from the fighting rank before you lose attacks from the supporting rank. In other words, everybody in the fighting rank has to die before you start losing attacks from the supporting rank. And I think this FAQ is still saying that after version 1.5. I don't think the meaning of this FAQ has changed, but some people think that it has, right? Some people think that this FAQ now has a new meaning, and essentially that phrase there where it says reduced firstly the number of models in the fighting rank that are able to fight is essentially an errata to the rule book that says remove from the ends of the fighting rank. Because if you're only removing models in the fighting rank that are able to fight, then you're not necessarily removing from the ends of the fighting rank because the ends of the fighting rank might not be able to fight. And so you might be removing from the middle of the fighting rank. So if you had a long line of orcs and that dragon were to charge in the middle of a long line, the ends of the fighting rank would be out of range to fight. But according to some people's methodology, method B in my example here, they would be taking casualties from the fighting rank that are able to fight and therefore not taking casualties from the ends of the fighting rank. Now, first of all, I mean, from my opinion, you know, we're kind of rules lawyering here. I don't think that that's what the FAQ says. I think all this FAQ is saying is that you lose fighting rank attacks before you lose supporting rank attacks. That's all I think it's saying. But some people want to play it differently. And putting all the rules to one side, you might be on one side of the fence or the other. If we just compare the answers here, right? So with method A, the orcs get 5 attacks back. With method B, the orcs get 2 attacks back. I think method A is obviously better for infantry, right? Because they're going to get more attacks back, particularly in scenarios where they're charged by a single model, and therefore they won't all be in range to fight. And I say infantry because cavalry don't have this problem, right? If their cavalry are movement 8 on average, it's quite likely that cavalry are all going to be in range to fight, unless you've got a massive line of cavalry, of course. But infantry with movement 4 on average, if they've got a wide unit and they're charged by a single model, it's quite likely they won't all be able to fight. And I think playing it by method A gives infantry more attacks, and hopefully that's all what we want. Now, let's look at a different example. Now, this is pretty much the same example, but we've got 20 orcs instead of 10. Now, obviously, the key difference here is that as we start taking casualties, the unit is not shrinking in width, right? It's staying 10 models wide, and we're just removing those casualties from the back rank. So a dragon charges into 20 orcs and kills 5. How many attacks back do the orcs get? So with method A or with method B, we're going to be left up like this in the end, right? Because we're removing 5 orcs from the back rank, and we're going to be in this position regardless of whether we do method A or method B, right? Now, with both methods, we have to measure, we have to measure how many attacks the orcs have at the start of the combat. So before we roll dice for the dragon, we have to see how many orcs are in range to fight. So we measure 4 inches from the corner of that base, and we can see that there's 7 orcs there that are out of 4 inch, out of movement range, so that can't fight, right? And so with method A, what's going to happen is we're going to take from the ends of the fighting rank and these five orcs are going to die. And so the orcs are going to get 13 attacks back, seven from the front rank, six from the back rank, 13 in total. If we were to use method B, we're going to remove five orcs that can fight, and therefore the orcs will only get eight attacks back in this example, four in the front rank, four in the back rank, eight attacks in total. Okay. But regardless of whether we use method A or method B, we've still got to calculate, sorry, measure, I keep saying calculate, we've got to measure how many orcs are in range to fight before we roll for the dragon, because it's going to make a difference as to how many attacks back we get. It's also worth mentioning that if you just do it the simple way, the pre 1.5 way, and you just remove five orcs and then measure to see how many attacks back the orcs get, you're going to get a different answer to both of those, right? You're going to get 12 because you're going to have seven on the front rank and five on the back rank for 12 in total. And obviously 12 is neither 13 nor 8. And so you can't do it the old way anymore. You can't just roll the dice for the dragon and then see how many attacks back the orcs have. You need to measure to see how many attacks the orcs have at the beginning of the combat, then roll the dice from the dragon, and then deduct those casualties from the fighting rank using method A or method B. Okay, so what do you think, guys? If a dragon charges 20 orcs as shown and kills five, how many attacks back do the orcs get? Are you on the method A side and it'd be 13, or do you think it's method B and it would be 8? At the end of the day, guys, I mean, if people play it differently amongst their group of friends, who am I to say that you're doing something wrong? Just have fun playing games of Warhammer. But I do think it's well, I wanted to say important, not necessarily important, but I think it's interesting for people to examine the different ways that people are playing it, particularly for TOs, right? So they can say to people, this is how we're going to play it in our tournament because, and obviously, if you want to make infantry great again, then I recommend we go for method A. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, guys. And let me know as well, how often does this happen in your games of Warhammer? Because I think if we are playing by method A, it allows, well, it's going to give more an incentive to have bigger blocks of infantry, right? Because if you're charged by a single model like a dragon, you're going to have more attacks back, and there's more of an incentive to have a wider unit because you can start taking casualties and not lose as many attacks back in return. Anyway, smash that like button as usual, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.